Round 2 of the Champions Cup. Some teams will be looking to book their place in the knockouts, other teams fighting for survival. My name's Mark, let's talk rugby. Round 2 Champions Cup shaping up to be pretty interesting. As I said in the intro, there are teams here that this weekend can pretty much guarantee themselves progress to knockout stages. If we have a look at last year, we had the kind of outlier of Ulster qualifying with 5 points, but the main thing to think about is that the team with the highest points who didn't qualify for knockout stages was Racing 92 with 9 points. So, any team that was, and it was actually Harlequins on 9 as well, qualified ahead of them because of points difference. But any team with 10 points or more are pretty much in the knockout stages. It'll have to be some really weird set of circumstances for them not to do that, with a lot of teams finishing on pretty much exactly the same record. So teams that have 5 points from the first round get 5 more points here and they're through. And even teams who get onto 2 wins, not necessarily bonus point wins, but they'll pick up 1 more point probably in the rest of the games, and they've qualified as well. So it's, there's a lot of incentives there for those teams. And then the other teams, who haven't won yet, maybe haven't even picked up a point yet, they've got to get themselves going. This is the time now to jumpstart their campaign and get themselves back on track. So what we're going to do is, as usual, go down through the fixtures, have a look at how they went in the first round, and then try and predict how they're going to go this time. So we're going to start with the Friday night game. Only one this time. So Friday 12th of December. This is an 8 o'clock kickoff at Mattioli Woods, Welford Road. Can they make stadium names any longer? It's crazy. But it's Leicester Tigers versus Leinster Rugby. And even though I'm a Leinster fan, when I see these two teams together, I'm always mixing them up because the names just sound so similar. I obviously know the difference between the two teams, but still, my mouth sometimes will just replace one with the other when they're playing each other. But yeah, this is one of those ones where you got, Leicester Tigers who in that first round, they didn't go their way, really is the best way to put it. Lost against La Rochelle, and from that now, they've really got to try and recover. But what an opponent to come to Welford Road to have to recover against. I think a vintage Leicester team would absolutely love the occasion about this and really get up for it. This Leicester team, they have shown they have something about them in the Champions Cup in recent years, just not quite at that top table really, but they have, more often than not progressed and more often than not as well met Leinster in the knockout stages and got knocked out by them. But again, those would have been in Ireland. So this is a decent chance for Leicester to show, listen, we're a team that can be taken seriously this year. And yeah, we've lost our first game, but we're going to come back. So I think that's got to be their motivation. Then Leinster, on the other hand, bonus point win against Harlequins in that opening round. But Quins got a try bonus point, didn't get a losing bonus point. But you feel like, yeah, there's more to come from this Leinster team. They still haven't hit the rhythm yet this season. And if you feel like this is a game that they really need to raise the level for. You're not going to go to Welford Road sputtering and stuttering your way to a victory over there. Yes, maybe in recent years there's a bit of a difference, in terms of quality between these two teams, but it's not that much. And rugby is all about those fine margins. And if the fine margins aren't there for Leinster, they could find themselves, with a defeat out of this one. So, they really do, I feel like, have to be absolutely on it there. And it's going to be interesting to see as well in terms of the 10s, because, Prendergast started the game against Harlequins and Harry Byrne come off the bench. But I felt like Harry Byrne kind of just brought a bit more togetherness, and the backline seemed to gel a little bit more when he was on the field. So it's going to be interesting to see, I'm pretty sure they're going to opt for Prendergast, but how much time does Harry Byrne get off the bench? And does he come on, basically with a team that is leading the game and looking to close it out? Or does it come on where Leinster are chasing the game and he needs to find something? Because Leinster, I've said it, I'm blue in the face saying it, as blue as Leinster's jersey, honestly, that Leinster are very bad at chasing games. And, Harry Byrne might be able to give them just as something a little bit extra. He seems to be much improved since, he went on loan to the Premiership last year and come back like a vastly improved player, honestly. And I've said it before about these Leinster guys, that are in there in the squad that are undoubtedly full of talent. But, if you've got all that talent and you're not playing and you're not getting to play in big games, you're going to stagnate a little bit. And I'd love to see more Leinster players going, doing what he did, whether it's going to another province, another team of the URC, or going to England or France on loan. Why not go and do it, get that experience, come back, be a better player, and fight for your place then. And that's what he's done. I think is brilliant. But back to this game, Leinster not firing. So this is harder to pick than maybe like last season. I would have just said Leinster win on this one, honestly. This season, it's much closer, I think, and maybe it's just my Leinster bias saying it, I do think Leinster will come out with the win here, but I expect, the Tigers will get something out of the game, whether that's, 1 or 2 bonus points, I'm not sure, but yeah, I think it's going to be a bit tighter than Leinster would like it to be, and I think there will be opportunities there if Leicester can take it for them to maybe even pull off a win. But I'm going for a Leinster win in that one. Okay, on to the next game then. So we're into Saturday now, 1 o'clock kickoff. This is in the Nelson Mandela Bay Stadium. It's DHL Stormers versus La Rochelle, and this is a big one because you got Stormers, leading the URC, and they've just been immaculate really this season. Attack and defense. Last week, go to Bayonne, they win there, and Bayonne had been unbeaten at home for a good stretch, so that was something for them to do already. But again, just this season, Stormers, both sides of the ball, have looked very impressive, and it feels like they're on a bit of a mission this year, which is great because I've said it since the South African teams come into the competition. What the competition needs is for a South African team to be fighting to get into semi-finals and finals and potentially lift the trophy. I think that's going to bring not just the South African teams to another level in terms of this competition, but also bring the competition itself to another level, because these are teams that can absolutely create massive rivalries, with French teams, English teams, whoever. But it feels like they're going to be part of that tapestry, the rich history that European competition has, and they feel like they're almost tailor-made to really come in and enhance that. Haven't really seen it yet, other than like Sharks winning the Challenge Cup, but I'm talking about a Champions Cup level. And if you've watched enough of this, it really is a different level compared to Challenge Cup. So really excited to see how they go. They're against La Rochelle, who hadn't been doing brilliant domestically, but as you talked about in the other preview, they beat Leicester Tigers fairly handily last time. last week, like by 19 points. So very good performance from them first up. And, we saw last week, the defending champions, Bordeaux, going down to the Bulls, losing at halftime, and then producing masterclass in the second half to take the win. La Rochelle is certainly capable of doing that. They haven't been up to the standard, when they won those titles, a couple of seasons ago, but they're still a decent side, and they're going to give it to the Stormers. But I think the Stormers have shown this season, again, they have that little bit more compared to the Bulls, I think, in terms of if things get tight, the Stormers seem to be able to kind of dig in and pull themselves through it better than the Bulls have been able to do. Like the Bulls have kind of fallen off a couple of times this season, but Stormers, they did it they went to Munster and they won there. They went to Bayonne and they won there, and now they're home, and it's going to be like a blockbuster game, and I think Stormers are going to take the win in that one. Okay, on to the next game then, and it is Hollywoodbets Sharks versus Saracens. So I would honestly say Sharks right now are kind of fighting for their lives in this competition. Started out last week with, just getting destroyed really by Toulouse. We had Ange Capuozzo getting a hat-trick, and lost by 37 points. And we've seen it with the Sharks. For whatever reason, you put like a Springbok jersey on those guys and they look amazing, and then you put them in the Sharks team and they suddenly look mortal. Now it wasn't nowhere near a full strength team that went to Toulouse last week, but the same can be said of the first team as well, and that's evidenced by the performance, or lack of performance really in the URC over the years that they've been in that so far, and the fact that as well, when they've been in this competition rather than the Challenge Cup, they haven't really stood out in terms of bringing quality to the competition either. So there's a lot, I think, of improvement that they need to make to be able to step up, and they need to start producing statement performances and statement wins. And maybe this is their chance to do it. They're against the Saracens team, who I would say in European terms are kind of on a little bit of a resurgence at the minute. Sarri started last week against Clermont Auvergne, who always take this competition seriously. They're kind of the way La Rochelle have done it. I think it's almost modelled on the way that Clermont Auvergne did it, where the team and the fans and the club took this competition to heart, and they went on a journey trying to win it. And for them it didn't work out. It did for La Rochelle, but that love of this competition is still there, and you can see it in terms of their commitment compared to other French teams when things maybe haven't been going their way. So for Saracens to put a big score up against them and win handily just shows you that they're up a level than we've seen maybe in the past few seasons in this competition. So it's going to be a tough prospect in this one. My head is saying that Sarries will probably go there and get a win. But I don't know why, I just got a feeling that the Sharks are going to produce something in this game and maybe give us a little bit of hope that they're, finally arrived in the Champions Cup, only to dash that hope, it probably in the third and fourth round. But yeah, I'm going to back the Sharks in this one. URC team, I like backing the URC teams, and when it's kind of a little one like this where I'm not sure head or heart, generally I'll go with the URC team. So we're going to go for the Sharks for the win in that one. Next then we have Clermont Auvergne versus the other Sharks, Sale Sharks. So this is an interesting one because you've got two teams who lost in the first round. So it's not quite a knockout because again, teams have qualified with only one win in this competition, last year. So, if you've still got 2 games to go, you certainly still have a chance to qualify. But if you've lost 2 on the bounce, it's not going to be smooth sailing getting through. You're going to have to really up your game. So, here, this one now, it's a chance for one of those teams at least to go in to those last 2 games with a victory, and then thinking, okay, get another win, and we're probably qualified. Pick up, maybe, a couple of losing bonus points on the road, and we at least give ourselves a chance in that final round to qualify. But, potentially one of these 2 teams is going into that final round looking for a miracle, looking for, this result and that result to go their way to qualify. So could give themselves a little bit more clarity, by winning this one. So, Clermont, as you said, they lost against Saracens and lost heavily in that one, but they're a proud club, with a great history in this competition as well. And I feel like, they're going to take this game very seriously. Sale then, they lost at home to Glasgow. That was a bit nip and tuck in that game, and Glasgow come over the top of them in the end. And, Sale are one of those teams, I'd say they're kind of less fancied English team. They don't have, the kind of pedigree that, say, the likes of a Saracens or a Leicester, or even like Bath from the olden days, or Exeter, who aren't in this competition this year, Northampton. Those are the teams that are kind of, have a lot of history in this competition, past winners, etc. Sale, not so much, but when a team builds that kind of history, they have to start somewhere, and but you feel like it's not quite yet for them, and I have a feeling that they're going to go away there, and maybe had a tight game last week, may not be as tight this week, and we might see Clermont actually put up a bit of a score. So I'm going to go for Clermont in that one. Next one, then we have defending champions Union Bordeaux Begles versus Scarlets, and this is a bit of a mismatch, honestly, in terms of you got defending champions, who basically they've come from, they're not that old of a club, but they've built themselves up, and we've seen a progress through the last 3 or 4 years of this competition, where they've gone from being maybe a team that other teams don't mind going up against, then being really good in the pool stages and not having it in the knockout stages, and then progressing from there, and then getting themselves to a final and lifting the trophy. And so it's been a steady kind of upward trajectory for them. Whereas Scarlets, it's rare for us to have, since the URC have changed kind of the qualification, where you're not guaranteed one from every union anymore. It's rare to see actually, Welsh teams qualifying. So we've got Scarlets this year, but it's not every year we're seeing a Welsh team in there, and it's been a while since we've seen Scarlets in this competition as well. And the fact that, they've had a very poor start to the season, they're bottom of the URC. Yes, they won in round 6 for the first win of the season, but that didn't really help them in terms of, their game last week. So, yeah, I think they're really up against it. And then, the Bordeaux, they went down to the Bulls. First kind of 20 minutes or so was kind of nip and tuck, back and forth between the teams, them just about staying ahead. And then the Bulls, last 10 minutes before the break, get themselves ahead 33-22. And in the second half then, Bordeaux managed to keep them to nil them, and put on, what was it, 20 odd points themselves, was 24 points or something, to to win the game. So, brilliant performance from them, coming back the way they did. And the fact that they're so dangerous as well with ball in hand, get the ball out to, whether it's Pernod or BLBRE, just the two of them can just tear teams up. And then you've got so much more talent there as well in that team. And, you look at the Scarlets team where, Scarlets are a team that, you could put a decent highlight reel together for them because they do score worldly tries, but they might score a worldly try, and still lose by 20 or 30 points in certain games as well. So, it's having that dog that they had last year seems to kind of desert them this year. And they really would need to be, on the kind of form that got them into 8th place in URC last year and more to get something out of this game. So I'm going to go for a comfortable win, I think, for Bordeaux. I don't like backing against a URC team. Like I've got their jersey there behind me as well. And hopefully give them a bit of good luck because I'd love to see Scarlets, not just for Scarlets, but for Welsh rugby as well. Just give the whole nation a lift. Go out there, cause a massive upset, and get people talking positively about Welsh rugby. But it's hard to see it. And I've got to be, even if I do have bias towards URC, got to be somewhat realistic in my predictions. So I'm going to go for the home team Bordeaux Begles to win that one. Okay, next one then. Munster Rugby versus Gloucester Rugby, and this one is 5:30 kickoff at the Super Value Parc y Cuivre, and so it's not at Thomond Park, but Parc y Cuivre is a decent place to be, and maybe it's going to give a bit of a kind of G up to the players as well. The fact that it's not at Thomond Park, because Thomond Park, for them at the moment, it's not the force it used to be in Europe. And, Parc y Cuivre is actually a nice place for them to go. I think, it means you get slightly different mix of supporters there as well. Less kind of Limerick based, as it were, nothing against Limerick fans, but I'd like to see more of the provinces kind of move the games around a little bit more. I'd love to see Leinster playing games outside of Dublin, especially in the URC and stuff. But Munster really are the only one that kind of move their games around a little bit more and let the Cork fans or the Limerick fans or whoever come to the games and make it feel like a proper provincial team, rather than like a capital city team, as you might think Leinster is. And just getting away from that as well, when the team hasn't done well in the first round, it might be a nice kind of change of scenery for the guys. And then I think their final home game is at Thomond. Go to Thomond, where it's maybe, it's for all the marbles, as it were, and have a massive atmosphere there, rather than maybe a little bit subdued, although Munster crowds generally aren't that subdued, but potentially in this kind of game. But, I think it's going to be an interesting one, because you have Munster there who really are fighting for their lives. They've got, massive history in this competition, be it, Champions Cup or Heineken Cup, whatever you want to call it. And it really does kind of feel like a bit of a barometer of where Munster are as well, because, when Munster are going well, you expect them to get into knockout stages, to be, potentially in quarterfinals. And then if it feels like this squad or this era of Munster, as it were, has to make another step, be competitive in a quarterfinal, give themselves a chance, semi-final, etc. But they're kind of on that cusp of, potentially being able to get there, because we saw what a good start they had to the URC season, and potentially going the other way and maybe not qualifying or getting knocked out in the round of 16. So they're kind of on a bit of a, at a bit of a crossroads really at the minute. And a big performance in this game could be, a bit of a catalyst for them to go on. And then Gloucester. Now, Gloucester's another one of those English teams who, they haven't, at least I don't think of them in that same kind of category as, again, your Saracens, your Northamptons, your Leicesters, your Quins, even Wasps who are no longer with us, Bath from the old days, etc., of being a team who really are, have been at the top table consistently in this competition. I think they're more kind of, you see them being very competitive in the Challenge Cup. So again, this is a chance for them. And I think maybe they're a step ahead of Sale in this respect, of being able to go on that journey and establish themselves, as a team that can be massively competitive in this competition. And I do think they have the ability to do it. It's whether or not they can perform, when it really counts. And I think a game like this is somewhere where it will really count for them. If they can go away to Munster, to Páirc Uí Chaoimh and get a win there, suddenly they're in the knockout stages, or pretty much, and then they're actually fighting for, who's going to win the pool, rather than kind of fighting to see if they're going to qualify or not. So I think that's how big this game is for them and how big they should treat it as well. So I think it's going to be a tough one for both of these teams. Munster against Bath, absolutely blown away in the first, what was it, 10 or 15 minutes, wherever it was. Penalty try, Byrne in the bin. 2 more tries conceded while he's in the bin. He comes back on. 4 tries conceded within 20 minutes or something. And Bath, game is done. Bath have their bonus point. Munster, trying desperately to get themselves back into the game, score a couple of tries into the second half. Or actually, another try from Bath before half time. Then into the second half, Munster get a bit of a wind in their sails, trying to get, a third try to set themselves up for potentially at least getting a try bonus point, and then Bath sucker punch them right at the end and blow the score out a little bit more. And, Munster performance just not good enough in that game. So they really do have to step it up here. They're kind of on that precipice of lose this game, and even if they do kind of scrape their way into knockout stages, they'll be seen as a soft touch, I think, for any team in the round of 16, and it's difficult to see them really turning that around. And it's weird because they've had such a positive start to the URC that they almost got blindsided by Bath in that game. So I want to see them improve here, and I think they will. I think they're going to step it up, and I'm going to go for a Munster win in that game. Okay, next then, Glasgow Warriors versus Toulouse. So for me, I think potentially the game of the weekend. You have a 2 teams, one in the first round. Toulouse, who generally just sail through the pool stages. They beat everyone that's put in front of them, and do it with such style as well. And they're going away to Glasgow now, and again, it's one of these ones where Glasgow can maybe produce a performance that will be remembered for a long time if they can pull off a win in this one, because losses for Toulouse in this competition, especially in the pool stages, are very, very rare. So if Glasgow can inflict one of those, it could again be something that helps them make that next step, because we've seen them. They've done it in the URC where they've gone from, doing really well in the league stages and then not turning up in the knockout stages. And then the year they won it, I think they started out by I think they went to Leinster and won, very well over there. And then went on and, they did it the hard way, going down to South Africa and lifting the URC trophy. And I feel like this could be the same kind of thing in terms of just kicking them on there, because we've seen them be competitive in the pool stages. We've seen them getting to a certain stage in the knockout stages, but then when it comes to that kind of quarter-final level, they don't quite have the, I'm not going to say the quality, because the team is full of quality. It's more that mental, top couple of inches that's maybe missing from them there, and winning a game like this could be massive for them. But you look at that Toulouse team, just absolutely soaked in stars. Like Toulouse have guys sitting in the stands, who would walk into almost any other team in Europe. That's how brilliant their squad is. So it's a big ask. And again, it's one of these ones where Head is saying, don't be an idiot, don't back against Toulouse. They're obviously going to win the game. Whereas Martin's saying, Glasgow, this is their chance to really step up and show that, listen, Leinster aren't the only URC team who can produce it at this level and take that next step. I want them to take that next step, and I'm going to back them. I'm going to back, probably against 90% of people, but I'm going to say Glasgow are going to win that game. Okay. Next game then is Harlequins versus Bayonne. And this one is kind of an interesting one, because again, you've got two teams lost their first game. Quins have been one of those teams where they've always been, thereabouts in their pool. Haven't always qualified, but they've always been close to that margin. And if you can get a result against them, you may get yourselves kind of in that position to be somewhere in the mix on the final day. And I think that's where both of these teams need to be thinking at the minute, because again, they lost their opening games, and Quins picked up a losing bonus point, and Bayonne didn't. Quins against Leinster certainly gave Leinster a tougher game than a lot of people expected. They did pick a stronger team, not a first team, but certainly a stronger team than generally English teams send over to Ireland to face Leinster, and they got the 4-try bonus point at that game. Whereas, Bayonne lost at home against the Stormers. They lost by 9 points, which means there was no losing bonus point for them, no try bonus point either. That tough Stormers defence denied them any chance of that. And Bayonne are one of those teams that you might think maybe already they're thinking, well, let's just prioritise the top 14. Even if we qualify now, potentially it's going to be in a way round a 16 game, and do we really want to deal with that? And I think they're one of those teams that could already be thinking about that, not prioritising this competition and just going after top 14 instead. So that could play into Quins' hands. And because of that potential, I'm going to go for a Quins win in that game. Okay, next then we have Castre Olympique versus Edinburgh Rugby. And, this one is interesting because Castre are home in this one. And, last time out, went away to Gloucester, beaten by 20 points. And now they're, unlike Bayonne, who lost at home, are now away. Castre, at least they've got the home game. See how it goes in that one, I think, and then decide what they're going to do in terms of, whether they're going to take the rest of the competition seriously or not in terms of their selection. So for them, I think there's definitely potential win on the cards here. And then you look at Edinburgh first round, Toulon came to Edinburgh, Toulon, who past champions, not quite at that level now, but still a top quality side. And Edinburgh were able to pull out the win by 13 points in that one, denied Toulon any kind of points there, and get themselves a bonus point win as well. So, fantastic start to the, to the pool stages for them. And just the fact that both Scottish teams won in the Champions Cup on the same weekend as well. Just absolutely amazing. But now, this week, both of them facing really tough games against French opposition to be able to try and repeat that. And, I think it's actually difficult to say which team has the more difficult task, because Glasgow, they're playing Toulouse, but they're at home. And then Edinburgh, Castre aren't Toulouse, but Edinburgh are away. And it's a tough place to go for any team. And it's difficult to call in this one. So again, I'm going to just about edge towards your C team and go for Edinburgh to, defy what Edinburgh fans will tell you, in that they are hugely inconsistent. And if you look at their record and that inconsistency, you would say that this will be a poor performance from them, and Castre will take the win, and Edinburgh will maybe regret, not being able to win this game later on in the pool stages. I'm going to go against all of that, all of what kind of history is telling me, and say Edinburgh are going to take the win in that game. Okay, so next then we are into some of the big games as well of the weekend. So first up, 3:15 kickoff at the Stade Félix Mayol, and is RC Toulon versus Bath Rugby. And again, you got Toulon, who are like they're a big team in this competition in the last kind of decade or so, right? Or kind of that era. And they've been down a little bit in the last maybe few years, and they're potentially going to come back up now. Whereas Bath, we're going back to the 90s really, when Bath won this competition. And it's been a long time since we've seen a Bath team be properly competitive at this level. But it's been a long time, until last season, that Bath actually won the Premiership, and they did that last season. So, this is a team on a mission, and a team that really have rapidly improved at Premiership level, and we're seeing it now at Champions Cup level as well. So, this is one where you look at it and you think, Toulon at home, it's going to be a difficult assignment for Bath, but I've just got a feeling, Bath have just been on it so far this season, and I feel like maybe they're going to pull out a win here. So I'm going to go for a Bath win in that one. On to then, next one, we have another, two big names in this one. It's 3:15 kickoff as well. So again, the games you want to watch on at the same time, because whoever decides these things is crazy. But it's the Cinch Stadium at Franklin's Gardens, because again, we need to make the names of stadiums as long as possible. The thing is, at this stage, the only kind of positive I can see with stuff like that is they're going to have to make the stadiums bigger just to fit the bloody names on them. And that maybe have a good knock-on effect for rugby. But it's Northampton Saints versus Vodacom Bulls. So you got the Saints who, they were fantastic last year in that game against Leinster and Dublin. Just absolutely, reversed the heartache of the previous year by beating them. Got themselves into a semi-final, and they've been thereabouts in recent years, and you feel like in this kind of era at the minute, if an English team were going to make a final, it would be Saints, just because they've been so close. And it's kind of, again, that kind of similar thing with Bordeaux, where a team sometimes has to knock on the door a few times before they finally make it, and then once they get to the final, then they realize the opportunity is there, and they're able to take it. And maybe that's going to be Northampton this year or next year, or maybe that they'll be another kind of Clermont type thing, where you have that rise up, but not quite that peak. And the same with Leinster as well in recent years, getting to finals, but not getting the hands on the trophy. But Northampton, in terms of the club, obviously they have the history of winning this competition previously. Vodacom Bulls haven't, but again, like the Stormers, they're a team that really could elevate themselves up to a level to be hugely competitive in this competition, but we're not seeing it from them. I thought, when they were leading Bordeaux last week, I thought, oh yes, this is it. Like, the Bulls are gonna produce a performance to make the rest of Europe, stand up and take notice of what's happening down in South Africa. But it didn't happen, unfortunately. And with this one now, I just hope they send a decent squad up here, because they have a tendency to send weakened squads up to Europe for these kind of games. So we'll see what happens there. But Saints at home, they won. They won last week, and it was a decent victory. Because they went away to France, playing against Pau, who've been going really well. I think they're second in the top 14 so far this season. So Northampton went there, and they got the win, and they'd now Pau any kind of bonus point out of the game as well. So and a bonus point win for themselves. So really good performance and victory there. And they're home now against a Bulls team who produced a brilliant first half performance against Bordeaux, but a second half performance that was almost the reverse of the first half performance in terms of the quality that they produced. So I'd love to see a reaction from the Bulls in this game, but I think the margin is just a little bit too much towards Northampton in this one for me to make that kind of back to your C team decision. So I'm going to go for Northampton to win, but I absolutely hope that I'm wrong. I'm so going to be cheering for the Bulls in that game. I really want them to perform, and I want South African fans to experience what it's like in this competition, where your team just gets on that roll, builds that momentum through the competition, and gets to a semi-final, a final, or even lifts the trophy, because it's absolutely magical. And I know you guys, you love your rugby anyway, but it makes you love rugby even more when that happens to your team. But again, prediction is for Northampton, but my heart is with the Bulls. Okay, on to then the final game of the round. So Bristol Bears versus Pau, and two less fancy sides, I think it's fair to say. But Bristol, they've won the first game. They didn't win it with a bonus point, but it was still a win. They went away to Scarlets and they got scraped that win by 1 point. And they put themselves in a position now where if they win this game, they may, because they didn't get a bonus point the first time out, they might have to pick another point up somewhere, but they've got another home game to be able to do that in. And then they should be qualified. So massive kind of incentive for them to win this game. Pau, we saw them, normally they're in the Challenge Cup. We've seen them in the Challenge Cup be another one of those teams who are up and down all the time. And they could go into this game and just play out of their skins and cause a bit of an upset against, a Bristol team who maybe aren't used to performing at this level. But so it's kind of interesting. It's a real kind of shootout between these two. But I feel like if Pau don't win this, in their pool, you're thinking Bordeaux and Northampton are going to go through. Bristol will have put themselves in, position to probably go through with them as well. And then it's going to be a bit of a dogfight with Scarlets, Bulls and Pau to qualify in those last 2 rounds. I think that's what it might actually happen here, is that Bristol are going to win this one. And then depending on how other results go, it is going to be a bit of a shootout. Obviously, if Scarlets or the Bulls can get themselves a win this weekend, then it kind of changes things a little bit. But you could see Bordeaux leading the way, and then the 2 English teams tucked in behind them. So yeah, I'm going to go for Bristol winning that one. And so that's the end of our preview for round 2. Let me know what you think down in the comments.